In less than 72 hours, there's a massive liquidity injection coming to the altcoin market, with $5 billion set to be injected into the crypto ecosystem. Today, I'm going to break down what that means for altcoins and how you can capitalize. It's going to be a massive show because we also need to talk about the reversal that is currently happening on Ethereum and what that could also mean for altcoins. I want to give you a full market update of where I see Bitcoin right now and what to expect this week. Obviously, it's a big week with Nvidia earnings happening tonight, and I want to give you some of my top altcoin plays at the end of today's video that I am currently identifying as outliers in the market. If you enjoy content like this, where I give you the daily crypto alpha that you need to know, make sure to click that subscribe button and hit that post notification bell so you don't miss a single video. And I want to ask one more favor before I get into the amazing alpha of today's video. Smash that like button so we can show the algorithm that this video deserves to be shown to more people, because I'm sure that the information inside this video is going to help a lot of people and make them aware of a big event that's coming this week that almost no one's talking about. I'm actually shocked that the liquidity injection is not being discussed by more people. My timeline's relatively dead, but I want to remind you that it's actually, something that's pretty impactful for crypto and is likely going to affect our bags. So firstly, let's begin by talking about Bitcoin. Then we're going to get into the Ethereum reversal. Then I'm going to get into the liquidity injection, what it means for altcoins. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to talk about the specific altcoins that I'm currently looking at right now. Just a quick summary of where Bitcoin sits. Obviously, it's been on a massive run. This orange region here is the resistance for Bitcoin, which were the prior two all-time highs. We actually deviated above that level before having a slight retracement heading into the week. And I think the market right now is just a little bit offside, just waiting patiently for Nvidia earnings. I think if earnings are good, and we'll discuss that scenario in a minute here, you could see a definitive breakout. It does look like Bitcoin wants to go higher. If you do look at the weekly chart, it is quite a bullish picture. However, if you do get negative earnings, expect maybe a little bit of downside on Bitcoin. You do have this key 104K level. So there are kind of two scenarios right now, and I have no definitive answer for you today on Bitcoin in the short term, because, as traders, we do have to just do our best to take the new information and act accordingly. You've got 104 as the key level for Bitcoin if it does have a dip now, or if it goes higher, you should expect around 114 to 115. Now, I think balance of probabilities, just looking at how far Bitcoin's come and how aggressively it's run up, you can see that this is the 8th green Bitcoin week in a row, or it would be if this week's green. We've never had 9, so it's pretty much at a record pace in terms of its uptrend. I think that we can expect a cool down at some point, just because it's run up pretty aggressively. And, as MM points out, we haven't actually seen more than 8 consecutive green weeks on Bitcoin. We had a very strong period in November, October 2023. We had another strong period in that same period of the year in November last year, and we're seeing it again now. But typically what happens after these very strong legs is you have price consolidation. So we saw a strong run up here, then we consolidated for a bit. We see a strong run up here, we consolidated for a bit. We see a strong run up here, we consolidate for a bit. I am expecting that happens at some point for Bitcoin. I guess the only question is, do we go to 114 first, then consolidate? Do we go to 104, then consolidate? I am expecting Bitcoin just to chill out for a little bit at some point soon, because I think we are overall due for a pullback. Interestingly, it is the Bitcoin conference at the moment. You're probably going to see some announcements and some news coming out from Vegas. And I had someone in my Discord say, "Oh, but there's going to be lots of announcements, right? So that's going to pump price." Well, I did a bit of back testing, and what I realized was pretty much every single Bitcoin conference, as you can see represented through the red lines here, has resulted in a dip for Bitcoin. So if there were going to be a pullback on Bitcoin, it would probably be coming at a time, the Bitcoin conference, that we typically do see these retraces. And of course, correlation, causation, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's 100% correlated, but I do find it funny that Bitcoin typically runs prior to conferences and then dips, runs, then dips, dips. Maybe it's also the time of the year, because these typically happen in Q2 to Q3. That's typically a weird period in the market. Bitcoin's typically a lot stronger towards the end of the years, but since the conferences are either in April, May, June, that's, I think, also one of the reasons why you do see these declines. So just something to be wary of. Once again, not expecting a Bitcoin crash or anything like that. just want to make you aware and give you a balanced opinion today that, look, we've run up for, this would be the 8th consecutive week. We do have the Bitcoin conference. Historically, we see pullbacks. Just be a little bit wary into, obviously, the Nvidia earnings. Now, in terms of the data around Nvidia and what could happen there, I liked this post from the Frontrunners X account, and it goes through how Bitcoin tends to respond on average to Nvidia earnings. So when Nvidia beats earnings, Bitcoin typically moves higher, plus 2.8% preprint, plus 0.3% over 24 hours, not huge, but up, and plus 3% over 7 days, flat over 30 days. When Nvidia meets or misses, Bitcoin tends to sell off, minus 2.7% preprint, minus 2.6% over 24 hours, minus 4.7 over 7 days, and minus 9.2 over 30 days. So it's not a huge decline, but Nvidia missing could be a trigger just for a little bit of a Bitcoin cooldown. And Nvidia beating, I don't think sends Bitcoin to the sky, but I think what it does is it puts the wind into the sails of an altcoin market, which is already looking ready for another expansion to the upside. So it could just mean Bitcoin goes sideways for a little bit. Maybe we do go to 114, maybe we just chop around 110. But then what happens is alts have a little bit of a catch up because obviously they've been lagging Bitcoin a lot. So although Nvidia earnings probably don't send Bitcoin to the moon or, crash it all the way back down, what it probably does is just signal risk off or risk on in the short term for altcoins. Another pretty important thing that I thought was worth mentioning today is that we are seeing Trump continuing to accumulate Bitcoin through various means. This time, his media company announced a $2.5 billion Bitcoin Treasury deal. So essentially what they are going to do is sell approximately $1.5 billion in the company's common stock. They're going to use that to begin a Bitcoin treasury. So basically, this will be one of the biggest treasury deals of any public company. So Trump's setting the precedent here. I think the more interesting thing is what other companies potentially follow suit, because there's clearly a race right now to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible, and Trump is leading the way. And obviously, this is very good structurally long-term for Bitcoin. Don't think short-term it matters that much. I think definitely Nvidia and some of these other events tend to have more of a swing in the short term, but longer term, clearly, the narrative for Bitcoin keeps getting stronger and stronger. And that's why I said this in my AMA. I think Bitcoin will continue to go higher this cycle, 120K, 130, 140. I know Fred Krueger's saying 200K plus. I think we could have some crazy targets later in the year. And that does mean, in my opinion, dips are for buying. So ultimately, if we do get any dips over the next few weeks, I'll be looking to take advantage of that, especially on some of the alts that I think are really relevant to the current environment, which I'm going to speak about later in today's video. Altcoins that have also regulatory tailwinds, DeFi, stablecoins, these sorts of narratives I think are really, really strong alongside, the classic strong communities that you have in AI and other hot sectors as well. And I'll touch on a few specifically later in today's video. But I want to talk about Ethereum now. And then I want to talk about the big liquidity injection that could be happening for altcoins, which could really be very good for the market if Nvidia has good earnings. Look, I don't think Nvidia is going to be the be all and end all, but in the short term, it would definitely speed up the pump, I think, if all things go well, especially with the magnitude of this liquidity injection, which we're going to discuss. But as a segue into that, what we need to talk about is Ethereum, because Ethereum, for the first time since the new year, has officially flipped trend versus Bitcoin. So obviously Ethereum's been beaten down for a long time. People have been getting bearish on Ethereum. And what we've seen is that during its period of peak hate and peak FUD, we are now starting to see a confirmed reversal versus Bitcoin. And if you want my opinion, I actually think there could be more legs to the upside for Ethereum. So I know every creator and every analyst has a different opinion on where the market's going. That's fair enough. I actually think Ethereum could be due for a bit of a rally. Not only because it's bounced versus Bitcoin, as you can see here, it's bounced off that very key level that it also bounced from in 2019, but it's also starting to look good versus Solana, which has obviously been its main competitor and clearly an asset that a lot of people have shifted their Ethereum out of for Sol. That's something that I personally had done. I sold a lot of my Ethereum. I basically hold no Ethereum now. And instead, I hold a lot more Solana. But the chart right now, and this is the key line in the sand, it's this 15.5 region, shows that ETH also versus Solana is starting to gain steam. It's also breaking momentum indicators. So it's broken the money noodle on the daily whilst also having an RSI uptick from the lows. So everything seems pretty poised for ETH to keep running. It doesn't look overbought. I mean, if you look at the RSI, it's been bottomed out for a while. It looks like there could be a bit of relief here. And hey, maybe that relief only takes us to this level here. That would still be quite good for altcoins. So what happens in an environment where ETH actually starts leading versus Bitcoin? Well, you do see the on-chain ETH stuff come back to life. So things across DeFi, memes on Ethereum, stablecoin protocols on Ethereum. There's one in particular I'll talk about later today. These are really well positioned when Ethereum runs. It's just good for DeFi and it's good for altcoins overall. In fact, ETH running is more important for crypto than Bitcoin running right now, in my opinion, because ETH is the leading altcoin. Bitcoin is not the leader of the alts anymore. Obviously, the market goes risk on and risk off based on Bitcoin, but it is institutionalized to an extent. It does have the ETF, so it's broken the mold a little bit. Whereas Ethereum running, that is a direct signal for risk on in the altcoin market. So although I don't hold much Ethereum, I'm rooting for a continued ETH BTC reversal here. And there are some reasons why that could be the case. We recently saw the announcement of a new fund, which is pretty similar to MicroStrategy's fund, which is going to start actively accumulating Ethereum and running that playbook with IOUs, and that could potentially bid up the price of Ethereum. So it's this here. It's SharpLink Gaming, who are utilizing private placement like Strategy does to initiate Ethereum Treasury building. So this would essentially run that same playbook. They're listed as SBET on the NASDAQ. They actually pumped yesterday pretty hard. And this could be an interesting precedent to set for other companies that potentially want to do the same thing. So although, this might not be as big as the Sailor thing, I highly doubt it is, at least there is some sort of a bid for Ethereum, right? Some sort of corporate/institutional interest for Ethereum. And I do think, amidst all the hate, and maybe I still don't want to hold a lot of Ethereum, right? But I do think amidst all the hate, you do have to realize that, look, the stablecoin sector is something that's massively growing. We are seeing the push towards regulation of that department from the Trump administration. We know that World Liberty and Trump, have supported the ETH ecosystem. They've also supported Solana, but we know there's a lot of interest in it. And we also know it's still the biggest ecosystem in terms of TVL and wealth effect. So I think there's enough there for me to say, look, at some point it could go on a run. Now, there'll be pullbacks along the way. There'll be periods where it starts underperforming again. But generally, if this is a cycle reversal, that could be quite good for the market. And you're already seeing the on-chain signs, starting to wake up on ETH. The number one coin right now on Dex Screener is this coin called Zeus. Now, this has been an absolute crazy runner because it ran up from 5 million market cap to, I think, 60 million. It's now pulled back to 40 million. This is the Matt Fury family. So like Pepe, this is another spin-off meme. There's been other ones, but this is the one that's recently gained traction. And this is signaling to me, given the fact that it's an Ethereum altcoin, that when ETH does well, the Ethereum ecosystem does well. So maybe a bit of a sign of things to come. Crazily, I just hired a new researcher, and on his very first day in our WhatsApp group, he posted this. He said, "Hi, I'm new here. I'm sharing this. It could backfire on me if it dumps." It didn't. It pumped. He said he's seeing a lot of smart money buying this. He tracks, all the whale wallets. It's Matt Fury season on ETH, and I found my favorite play for the meta. Always loved Zeus narrative, and finally seeing it done with a proper content and team. Zeus is Pepe's dog, and Fury's alter ego. Best beta narrative there is to Pepe. Pepe 6 mil, Zeus 5 mil. And I personally faded this, but I'm never fading his alpha again because since then, it's gone from 5 mil at one point. It was a 10x to 50 mil. It's now back down to 40. But absolutely insane. And he's one of my, lead researchers on the on-chain stuff. I was actually talking to him a few minutes ago where we're finding more and digging for more alpha that, of course, I'm going to share in my Discord and on the show. So, yeah, we're just expanding the research team, and that was a very, 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 very good first call. I think a couple of my team members hit it, but I didn't, which is dumb because if I had, actually paid attention to the message, this is definitely the type of degen thing that I would have bought. And I still think, if there's a big pullback on this, I think it's a cool narrative. But I don't know, where the upside caps out, probably 100 mil. I think it's hard in this environment to see a huge meme runner, unless ETH obviously kept running. So you'd be betting on that a little bit, but always be careful when there's huge pumps. Funny, this post was even still before the next 2x on Discord, so it still went up after that. So that's the update on Ethereum. That's the update on Bitcoin, Nvidia, etc. But let's get into the big news. And the big news is something that you may have heard about before, but is now actually happening in 2 days' time. And that is the FTX Creditor Repayment. So this was a narrative that was really big last year. But the truth is, it's not until May 30th that money is going to start hitting the accounts, stablecoins specifically, of the FTX creditors. So this post does a great job at explaining it. Axel says, May 30th might be one of the most important days this cycle. FTX is distributing over $5 billion in stablecoins to creditors this week. That's around 2% of the total stablecoin supply, huge amount by the way, getting dropped into the market in one shot. And the timing couldn't be better. ETH pumping, Bitcoin near all-time highs, alts gaining traction, and I must say alts have held up decently. Pro-crypto narratives heating up in DC, obviously with Trump and the stablecoin initiative as well. Legislation finally moving. When that $5 billion hits, it's not sitting idle. These guys aren't just going to withdraw and leave. I'll give you my opinion on that in a second here. Most of them stayed in crypto despite the FTX blow up, and they're getting their bags back. They're going to rotate that liquidity back into the market. In my opinion, this could be the catalyst that pushes Bitcoin to 120K and triggers the old season setup we've been waiting for. Eyes on May 30 feels like the start of the next leg. So this is true. I did some digging. Now, maybe it's not all going to hit on one day, but this is where the stablecoin portion, around $5 billion, is going to start the distribution to creditors. And you can actually see that a lot of these claims are now visible in the BitGo app. So a lot of them are now actually able to see their claims. If you were a victim of FTX, by the way, you have until June 1st, I believe it is. Check it out, either June or July 1st. I think it's June 1st to actually submit your KYC for a claim. So if that is you, this is your last chance to do it, because if you don't do it, you're not going to get your money back. But these creditors are now going to start receiving their stablecoins in just 2 days' time. Now, I don't know if I'm as bullish as Axel in the sense that, this $5 billion is going to flow straight into the altcoin market. Clearly, a lot of people, some people will put it into Bitcoin, some will put it into Ethereum, some will keep it in stables, some will put it into alts. But what I do know is that this is net new liquidity hitting the market. And what I also know is that not a lot of people are talking about the FTX creditor repayments right now. Everyone was talking about it last year, but it doesn't feel like buy the rumor, sell the news to me. Otherwise, people would have been talking about it all week. It's only until today that people are realizing, this is actually happening in a couple of days' time. So I feel like this is a setup for a bit of sleeper liquidity to hit the market. And what you've got to ask yourself is, where is that liquidity going to go in the market? Now, I think Bitcoin's one, Ethereum's two, Solana's another one, but I think you're going to see some speculative capital also starting to hit the quality projects in the altcoin market. And that's where some of the narratives that I'll speak about in just a couple of minutes here really come into play. So although I don't think, $5 billion is going to hit the altcoin market, realistically, out of that, it might be a few hundred mil, probably more, probably over $1 billion. But, if you're being really conservative, a few hundred mil, that's still like net new liquidity that has not been in the space because there hasn't been a lot of retail coming into the market. The liquidity's been completely dry. So now having this, I think this could be a pretty good setup alongside some of these other catalysts that I just pointed out. And you can also see that others as well has actually, and this is the, altcoin top 10, crypto total altcoin market cap excluding the top 10. This has actually been consolidating above the 3-day money noodle and also this key pivot point, which was the rejection level that we got rejected off, and then that ended up creating local lows on the 7th of April, and that was actually our bounce zone, so our triple bottom zone, and now we've come up and we've reclaimed this level, and this is actually really nice consolidation on alts. I know some people are losing their minds in the chop, but I actually like this, and as long as we're above this level, I'm going to continue to be risk on with alts, and I'm going to continue to look for new opportunities because this is nice consolidation. That consolidation is happening alongside sentiment consolidation as well. You can see that before the big leg in November, we had months and months and months of just sideways sentiment. And that's also something that we've seen on social media as well. Right now, we've just been going sideways. And if you've, been watching the YouTube views, Twitter views, these markets aren't really that active right now. They were really active when the market pumped a week ago. If we had another leg like this, people would become super active again. But in this chop of the last couple of weeks, a lot of people are bored for some reason. But, it's funny because these periods of consolidation typically lead to expansion. And if you look at how we've actually rallied up on alts, it's been rally, base, and I do expect balance of probabilities around 70% in my opinion that we do break to the upside before we break down. I see the probability to the upside on alts, not to the downside. And obviously there's a little bit that depends on Nvidia and a bit that depends on Bitcoin. But overall, I do want to maintain risk on exposure to the altcoin market in the shorter term if, the chart's looking like this. Now let's talk about some of the assets that I'm watching closely right now because there are a few specific narratives which really stand out. The first narrative, and I was going to make a full video on this earlier in the week, but where I'm going to mention it today, and I might deep dive on it later, is the stablecoin narrative. So the Genius Act is a crucial piece right now for the US's official approval of stablecoins. So you can see here, if passed by both chambers of Congress and signed by the president, as it looks likely by the summer, the Genius Act will establish as the first comprehensive US regulatory framework for stablecoins. And the reason they're doing this is because they realize that in order to assert US dominance and have an advantage over BRICS and other currencies, they need to find any way possible to get market share. And with digital currencies, borderless payments, efficient payments, it just makes sense to do it via stables. So they have a vested interest. The Trump administration understands this in supporting the stablecoin ecosystem. And you can see here Senator Bill Hagerty saying the Genius Act will revitalize our payment systems here in America. Stablecoin holders will be the largest short-term treasury owners in the world, which asserts US dollar dominance. They have a huge vested interest here. And this act, in my opinion, is a positive tailwind for stablecoin protocols to launch, have good regulation, and know that they're not violating rules, but it also accelerates the adoption of stablecoins. You'll see a lot of companies now accepting stablecoin payments. You'll see it embedded into banking apps and all of this just because of the fact that it's officially regulated. And before, it was too difficult, or there was too much of a barrier to regulating these sorts of protocols. So that leads me to the stablecoin narrative. Not only is this a trend that I think will heat up as we get towards these official approvals, I also think there's a tangible net benefit financially for a lot of the top stablecoin protocols. So it's narrative based, but also tangibility based. Now, this is the top list, and then I'll get into some sleeper picks. Obviously, you have Athena. I like Athena. It's been a little bit weak, but if it starts to look good as an ETH beta slash stablecoin beta play, then I would look at potentially betting on that. Obviously, though, the Stablecoin Act more so benefits the tangible stablecoins, like the ones that are actually US dollar backed, but Athena has its own mechanism, and it's still a beneficiary as one of the leaders, in my opinion. Frax or FXS, I think, is in a good position as well. They actually pumped on the news, but they've come back a little bit since, so you could look at accumulating on dips. And there are a few others down the list which I really like. One in particular that caught my eye, that I've been really impressed with. I've been speaking to the team, and I like what they're building, is Asymmetry Finance. I think the market cap here is actually quite undervalued at 27 million, and I'll explain why. So you can see their TVL's been exploding. They're at 31 million. I think they're in a really good position to capture the upside of a lot of this new capital that's now comfortable earning yields through stablecoins, because basically the narrative is like three-pronged in my opinion. There's asymmetrical upside to the stablecoin narrative because there aren't that many investable proxies. Like if you look at the market, there aren't that many good ones, right? So this stood out to me as one of the lower cap plays that I like. 2, it's Fidelity backed, like Athena. 3, the key differentiator here is that it actually has fixed rates. So we'll get into the mechanism soon, but that's very good for people that want to park large amounts of capital, right? Variable rates make it, I think, difficult to have confidence to go and stake large amounts. And then lastly, the institutional narrative is strong here because you can supply BTC in the billions and actually set a rate. So you can lock your BTC or borrow with your BTC to actually get stablecoins on the other side. So this is basically how it works. You can borrow with your BTC and yield-bearing stablecoins at user-set fixed interest rates, immutable forever. They're powered by Liquidity V2. They're backed by Frax, Fidelity, Republic Capital, Side Door Ventures. Very strong protocol, very, very strong protocol. And what they're actually doing is tomorrow, or I think today, by the time this video goes live, is they're launching USDAF, which is the first place ever you can set your own fixed interest rates for Bitcoin and stables, immutable forever, independent Chainlink oracles, and you can multiply your leverage if you choose to. And this is launching today. You can see here that USDAF is backed by 8 collaterals: wrapped Bitcoin, Threshold Bitcoin, Coinbase Bitcoin, stacked Athena dollar, stacked Frax dollar, saving Sky dollar, SDAI, and S-Curve USD. And once this is live, you'll be able to play around with the platform. I think it's roughly 16% on SUSDAF, and then on their SAMP USD, it's 15.8%. Obviously, depending on how much you lock and stuff, you can choose a different rate to actually lock in. These are the 2 stables on the platform. But I think as a narrative and as a token, obviously the ASF token is the governance token behind all of this. I think it's one of the only decently valued investable proxies that have strong backing, have a strong product, and have potential for institutional interest. 27 mil is pretty low in my opinion. I think it can definitely go higher. I posted this in Discord actually a couple of days ago. It's already up 50% since then. So of course, join the Mars High Club for the early alpha. That's where I post all of my plays in real time. So that was on the 23rd of May. As you can see, that was back here, 23rd of May when it was 1.9, pumped to 2.7. It's come back a bit now to 2.65. Obviously, it's quite strong heading into their launch today. If you do somehow see a dip over the next couple of days, because sometimes, tokens sell off on launch, that could be a decent opportunity to get in. If not, if you are interested, you could try and look to get in on these pullbacks. Just a couple of days ago, we had a big pullback. The day before as well. It's not super liquid. Like if you want to look at the markets, you can see that it's on Uniswap, but the depth is quite low. So that does mean when people sell, you get these wicks to the downside. It means when there's a lot of buying, you get big pumps to the upside. So just keep that in mind. I do expect liquidity to improve once it's on major exchanges, but just keep that in mind. Obviously, it has a higher degree of risk due to the lower liquidity. But that's one of the lower cap plays that I really like. And I'm just trying to think if there's any more that I like. I'll go back to the stablecoin narrative. Obviously, you've got the big ones like, MakerDAO. That's, a safer play, a bigger play. You've got, Curve. These are fine and they're all going to benefit in my opinion, but where the real alpha is kind of looking down the risk curve a bit. There's another protocol that I was keeping my eye on that I thought I'd mention, and this is Plasma. The Plasma ecosystem is very interesting. They have their XPL token, public sale going live on Echo Dot. So that's at a 500 mil FDV. I would add that to your watch list and check it out. Zahir, who I really respect in the space, is a big backer of them. They are built on Bitcoin, and they also have big backers like Bitfinex Founders Fund, High Framework. So that's another one. But this is a narrative that I think is quite strong, the stablecoin narrative at the moment. So keep your eye on that. That's my alpha of the day for specific altcoins, in addition to all the other stuff that I've said. And just to end the video here, I'll speak about a couple other sectors I'm watching closely. I think if the market picks up, if altcoins do start running, I think AI is going to lead again. We're already seeing the early signs over the last week of AI performing really well. Look, I'm a big fan of Tau. I own a lot of Tau right now. And I also have many other higher beta plays in the ecosystem. I mean, you guys that have been watching the shows will know some of my top holdings. I think Anon's a really good one. There's also some lower cap stuff. We'll probably speak about it in future videos. But yeah, my AI bags are packed, and this I think will be a top narrative once the market starts to pick up. I also like FAI. I think as one of the only agents on Coinbase, that's a decent play. It's about 170 mil market cap. Is there anything else I like? I like Cookie. I mean, obviously I'm on Cookie, the website, which is amazing. By the way, I'm launching my own dashboard soon on Cookie, which is very cool. I've been working with the team. So we're going to create our own dashboard of my top agent tokens and watch lists and stuff like that. So that'll be really fun. But I think the Cookie token is an interesting play as well. This is another one that I called in Discord. I think it like 2x'd afterwards. Let's try and find the original post. It was this one here. I called it around 96 mil. I think it pumped to like 150 or 60, so a bit less than a 2x at one point. This was a really strong one, but I think, we can look at the chart right now, I think there's still upside on this. There was actually an interesting setup that I spotted the other day. Yeah, it's this setup here. So there's basically like a range starting to form. Now, what I wanted to see, and we're actually seeing it right now, is consolidation above this level. It can even go below, but I want to see this wick being held and this support band being held. If we consolidate, I'm happy just bidding the lows on retests, and then I'll set my stop below. It's that simple. Like in terms of a stop gap from the current level to the wick low, it's like 3%. So, you might risk 10% on the trade and then just wait for a reclaim. But that's like that's the base of the range that's forming. Obviously, you've got range high, deviation above, and then you've got your range low, which is now testing. So this actually could be a decent one to accumulate now. If you want to be very picky, wait to see how it reacts, and then on the next retest, confirm retest, you can bid those levels. There are other like strong AI coins I like. I mentioned Anon before. This broke down. This is actually a level that I spoke about to be quite careful of. This zone here. In my Discord, there's this coin updates channel, right? And if you go into coin updates and you search like Anon, for example, from Miles, you can see my updates. I answer questions every day on every single coin all the time. And, I've talked about the TA, and I send voice messages on like every on lots of coins every day. And I was just telling people to be wary of that breakdown. But I now think this could be getting into a decent accumulation zone as it reaches range low. They had a big pump because their HUD product was launching, which is very cool. But obviously, people, it's just a buy the rumor, sell the new space at the moment, and that's like every announcement. But that one could be decent to accumulate in the AI sector as well. And then the last sector I wanted to touch on is I wouldn't even say it memes at this point, but just coins with a very strong community. Like SPX is a clear example. It's almost at $1 again. Murad has not stopped relentlessly bull posting throughout the entire cycle. And to be honest, SPX is doing really, really well. So it's actually approaching highs again while a lot of other major memes are still down 90%. So this is an example of a coin that, okay, maybe it's not in a hot sector. Memes aren't that hot, but it has a good community. So never forget that in crypto, you're investing in community because that is how you get distribution. That attention causes distribution. And you can see in the comments, everyone's commenting like, there's no chart, illy, there's this huge community, 104 comments already on this SPX post, and that incentivizes more people to post about SPX to get engagement. So I think Murad, in terms of shilling an altcoin, has done a very good job in helping build the community. And this is just an example of a coin that proves that it could be a meme, it could be an AI coin, it can be anything. As long as it has a strong community, it's probably going to do well. So always look for the communities in crypto. That's probably the advice I want to leave you with to end the day. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for tomorrow. We're doing daily uploads at the moment where I bring you the alpha that you need to know every single day. Obviously, we have Nvidia earnings tonight, so I'll give you an update on that in tomorrow's show as we head towards the liquidity injection that we're going to get from FTX. See you in the next one. Peace out.